I'm Mike Matthews. I'm the president of the Red Clay Education Association. That's the teachers union that represents nearly 1,200 teachers in the Red Clay School District. About a month ago, we were presented by the State Department of Education with a plan to identify 3 of our schools here in the city of Wilmington, Warner, Shortridge, and Highlands, as priority schools. These schools were identified because they are lower performing schools in our state. And as being part of being identified, that opens them up to receive a little extra money to help support the students here in Red Clay at these 3 schools. That's a positive way of putting a plan that really could be dangerous to the schools we have here in the city and the communities that have built a livelihood around these schools. The districts received something called an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, that outlined several key pieces that would need to be followed in order to meet the state's direction when these schools were identified. Our union, our association, looked very hard at what the state was putting forward, and we felt that we could not agree to some of the stipulations in that document. Let me step back a bit. We know that these 3 schools in our city, in our district, have grave challenges. Many of the schools here in the city have challenges that are specifically a result of the poverty that has been allowed to fester here in Wilmington for decades. Our teachers that work in these 3 schools work with the same drive, passion, dedication, knowledge, and awareness of their students that every other school in the Red Clay District has. Our teachers come to work every day working with children who come to school with a set of challenges that we, by our very nature, work with outside of the regular reading, math, writing, science, social studies curriculum. So in essence, our teachers in these buildings are tasked with jobs that go far above the qualifications that they bring into these schools. The sad part is the challenges here at my school, Warner, where I teach, and Highlands and Shortridge and other schools in this city and other schools in the state, the challenge is that we are working with a funding formula that doesn't truly address the needs of these schools. Schools in Wilmington, in Newport, in Hockessin, in Greenville, in Newark, are essentially treated under the same funding formula. So a school like Warner, in some ways, receives the same funding as a school like North Star out in Hockessin. The class sizes can be the same. The services can be the same. The problem that we as a state have is we are not equitably funding the schools that need the most. Our government, and in some cases the districts, have allowed these schools to become hotbeds of poverty, and we as a state have not addressed that through our funding system. So while we as educators acknowledge that we have challenges at these schools, we don't think blaming the leadership and teachers in these schools is the way to progress. The Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU that I mentioned earlier, specifically stated that teachers would have to reapply for their jobs if they wanted to stay here at Warner, Shortridge, and Highlands. Now, I'd ask the parents of the city of Wilmington who send their children to these schools, do you believe that your child's teacher should have to reapply for his or her job? I know that the parents of Wilmington who send their children to these schools know that the teachers in these schools work hard and are dedicated to their children. Is the problem with the lack of achievement in these schools because of the teachers, or is it because the stressors in society that are being placed on these families who send their children here? Is it the violence in our communities? Is it that some of our kids come to school hungry? Are these the issues that account for the lack of growth that the state is claiming these schools haven't shown, and the reason why the state wants to come in here and mandate what goes on in our schools. So not only would teachers have to reapply for their job, the school district would be forced to have a principal in these buildings and pay them almost the same rate that the superintendent would be getting. The superintendent, our superintendent, makes about $170,000 a year. Under this plan, the district would have to pay the principal of the school $160,000 per year. We don't feel that by paying a principal more, the results are going to change. The teachers in Red Clay believe that leadership is a key point in a school's success, but we don't feel that dictating that a district's monies go towards paying more for a principal, that that's going to achieve the results that the state thinks it will. One of the more egregious pieces of the plan that the MOU that the state has put before us is to potentially dissolve our collective bargaining rights. As president of a union, we have concerns with this. Our members bargain and negotiate a contract with the interests of our student in mind. Yes, we negotiate things like our salary and our benefits, but most of what we negotiate are the working conditions in our buildings here in Red Clay. Our working conditions are your students' learning conditions. If our rights to bargain a contract were taken away by the state if we agreed to this plan, we fear that that could severely impact the level of services that we are able to provide for your children, because we would not be able to advocate on their behalf. If we advocate too loudly, well, we don't have a contract, we can be let go for, speaking up, ruffling some feathers. So for the state to include this in their MOU, which they'd like to be in agreement with the district, we feel is particularly insidious and offensive to the 100 teachers who work in these 3 buildings every day. Our concerns are that the state has continued to not pay attention to what's going on in the city. And in some respects, I would even say that the city has not paid attention to what's going on in these schools, because in a way they've been absolved of that responsibility because the city has been carved into 4 school districts. So rather than the city having direct input into these schools, it's been put off on the 4 school districts. I am pleased to hear that there are some on City Council who are really beginning to speak up on this issue of what's going on in our schools in the city of Wilmington. Several council people have come out in support of this MOU with the state. I'm really urging them to re-look at that train of thought and see what this could possibly bring to our schools. It's bringing about $200,000 per year to each school over the next 4 years. We don't believe that's enough money to address the serious social concerns that are within these buildings that are causing those achievement rates to be so low. We don't believe that simply giving $200,000 per school over the next 4 years is going to address those concerns. The members of my association believe the governor and the state legislature need to more seriously look at issues such as class sizes. A weighted funding formula where every school automatically is given a guidance counselor, an art teacher, a gym teacher. The problem with our current funding formula is each school earns a certain number of teachers based on the number of students in the building. It's then up to that building principal to choose how he or she wants to use those units. And when I say units, I mean teacher. So, if a school earns 30 teachers, that principal can choose to have those 30 teachers as homeroom teachers. What do you get? Small class sizes. Or that principal can choose to have 20 homeroom teachers and then have an art teacher, a gym teacher, a guidance counselor, a librarian, but then you're going to have larger class sizes. The argument that our union, our association has made for the last few years is that schools with higher needs need to receive higher services. Schools that have 95 to 100% poverty need more teachers. We need smaller class sizes because we know that works. We know it works when you come into a class of 15 fifth graders as opposed to 25 or 30, which some of the classes in our school district are experiencing. We need to look at this holistically. The Department of Education's plan and the governor's plan does not do this. It continues to kick the can down the road for when these folks are all out of office, they don't have to look at it anymore. I have personally called on the governor to look in the coming years, to look at a way we can better budget for these schools that the state is identifying as low performing. You can walk into this school, I'm at Warner right now, you can walk into this school anytime and you're going to see kids working. You're going to see teachers working. You're going to see kids engaged in lessons. There is learning going on here. What I'm saying is that the children in these three schools come in lower than children at other schools in the district. So it takes our teachers that much more work and time to get them up to proficiency levels. When you're working with children who are coming in at such levels of proficiency, to get them higher, it's going to take more. Our teachers are doing more. But when is more and more and more? When is enough enough until we really begin to look at the challenges facing our school system? The state can label our schools all they want, priority schools, partnership zone schools, focus schools, but what's really being done to address the needs in these schools? Throwing $200,000 a year at us is not enough. It's a start. It's a start. And if some good programming can come as a result of that $200,000, after school programming, good training for our teachers, extracurricular activities, then that's a start. But you're not going to see results. The governor is not going to see the results that he wants unless we take a serious look at how we fund our schools. My association, my teachers union, does not support the MOU that was thrown at districts on September 4th. We'd like to work collaboratively with the state and our school district to come up with a plan that addresses the needs of our students and not some bureaucratic checklist from Dover. We have jobs we need to get done. We wish that the state would partner with us in a more collaborative atmosphere to really bring about some change for the children in these three schools. They deserve it. We need to work together. We need to do what's best for them. And I'm just hopeful that at the end of the day, the Red Clay School Board, if they're going to pass some kind of plan, takes into account that the teachers in these schools are truly representing the best interests of their students. As it stands right now, I refuse to support an MOU put forth by this Department of Education that at its very base is offensive and insidious and completely disrespectful to the professionals who work in these buildings. If they want to negotiate, if they want to bring forth a better faith idea, then I say bring that, bring that. The problem is, they may have waited a little too long. I think that as a city, we need to refocus our efforts, focus our efforts on what's going on in these buildings. And rather than throwing stones at our teachers, our educators in these buildings who work day in and day out with these students, I think we need to form a more collaborative partnership to really diagnose the ills in our communities that are causing these schools to face such hardship. I'm hopeful that something great is going to happen as a result of all of this. I'm glad that legislators in Dover are really engaged on this. I think 2015 is going to be a legislative year where this state finally takes education and funding of education seriously. It's been far too long, but I'm ready to get down to business. So I'm hopeful that the public as well keeps pressure on its elected officials, and you show up at every board meeting, at every city community meeting. Just come on out. We need to hear your voices, because that's the one thing that we need to hear more of. We need to hear more from you. You send your children to these schools, you need to be out here because that is what we have to lose. That's what we have to lose. If we don't agree to the state's plan, this is where you need to listen. If we don't agree to the state's plan, they will come in here next year and take them over. What does that mean? They'll either close the school, they'll turn it over to a private management organization, such as what's going on at Moyer right now, or they'll convert it into a charter school. I think this city has seen a mixed result of how charter schools have operated in this city. These are our community schools. The professionals in this building know how to work with these children, with our children. We just need more resources. So I'm hoping that those of you watching this show will step out, call your state legislator, call the governor, call the Department of Education, show up anywhere you can and agitate. And when I say agitate, I mean raise your voice, raise your hand, speak up, get on someone's nerves, and ask tough questions that need to be answered, because this is about your kids. This is about my kids, my students here. I teach 5th grade at Warner Elementary. This is my first year, and I love it. The kids here aren't dumb. I know the state may pull up all the numbers at once. The state may pull up all the testing numbers that it wants to say, your kids can't take a test. Yeah, you know what? It's a test. They can't take a test. I come in every day, and these kids bowl me over. They bowl me over at what they can do. And we work through the things that they can't. But to label this school, it's cheap. It's easy. It's cheap to label a school. And it's simple. And it absolves someone of the responsibility that they should have put into this school years ago. So, to end on a positive note, I'm really hopeful that at the very least, we're getting a dialogue going. We are getting a dialogue going, and the community is engaged, and we're not looking back. I just want folks to know that I'm here, the teachers in this building are here, the teachers at Highlands and Shortledge are ready to hear you and listen to you. We need your thoughts. You're a partner with us. You send us your children every day, and we just need you with us in this discussion. So thank you again, and please feel free to reach out to me. My name is Mike Matthews again, and have a great evening.